Greetings everyone, I'm Record the Second, and welcome back to the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Retrospective. In this episode, I'm ditching the live commentary because there's a lot to cover about the game, and it's going to be kind of hard to do that while I'm concentrating on beating 3 challenges, so I'm just going to silently do that, and in the background I'll be talking about all the things that I forgot to mention in the previous video so that I don't have to scramble and make too many extra videos in the future. So let's start with the prehistory of this game. Obviously the first one was an unexpected hit for Scott, and he decided to keep making the games while they were still hot basically. So he started very quickly with dropping a teaser that showed a whole new Freddy design, which is probably the best Freddy design in the whole franchise, and it said 2015, which is not even remotely when the game released. It released way ahead of schedule in November. The momentum for these games just had no time to die because the games were coming out so fast. By the time we were done dissecting and beating the previous game, the next one was already out. MatPat even complained about how he could never make a theory about the new FNaF game ahead of time, or even when he was planning to do it scheduled with the release because it was way too quick. That's just how Scott works. When he works on a game, he usually doesn't go back and change shit. He just keeps it the way it is, and once he's added all the stuff he really wanted to add, he'll just basically call it a day and drop the game almost. Because like I said, it's very evident he cut a lot of corners in this game. Sorry for saying that specific phrase so many times, but it's truly a really good way to describe exactly what I'm talking about, and I'm going to get a little bit more into detail of that later again. But first, of course, we have to mention that this is the first of many iconic Five Nights at Freddy's teasers. He always posted something on his website, but it's only in the era of FNaF 2 being teased and developed when this actually became a thing. And I remember back in the day, me and the boys would go checking scottgames.com, refreshing that page, saying, is there a new teaser? He never told you if anything dropped. You had to go check yourself, and it was a community thing. As soon as a new teaser went up, people were sharing it with everyone. People are making YouTube videos. Like the second they saw the teaser, they jumped on it. It was just a whole different era. Nowadays, you just have to wait for some kind of gameplay trailer or something for half a year because it's all corporatized. It's all part of the franchise, marketing, release schedules, all that legal nonsense bullshit. But Scott was just built different. That man was dropping teaser after teaser, and they were all iconic. And I'm so glad that he kept doing it almost all the way up to the Ultimate Custom Night, basically. Yeah, he did technically do more teasers for Security Breach and for Help Wanted later, but he kind of stopped doing that after you know what happened. We're not gonna mention it in this video. So yeah, a lot of these teasers was just amazing. They were really easy at first to see what they're teasing: the mask, the new Foxy design, the new animatronics, and the withered animatronic designs as well. But the first teaser that actually hid information from us was the puppet one, when you had to brighten up the image, and that was the first of many dark images that you have to brighten up to actually see what the teaser is. Oh my god, such an iconic piece of FNaF history, and you know, I don't think new generations of FNaF fans even know the magic of the teasers of scottgames.com, and it's actually kind of hard sometimes to find good quality images of the teasers online. I found this really great resource. It's a website, and I'm going to leave the link in the description so you can check it out as well. It has pretty much every teaser archived, if I'm not mistaken, and they are the best quality there was. I think Scott had a shitty laptop, so a lot of his earlier games were kind of low res because his computer wasn't even, the screen resolution wasn't even big enough to have actually high quality renders. The games got better in terms of resolution as they went on. For example, Pizza Sim noticeably had way more detailed graphics than the previous games, but when you look at the old games and you just see the renders, they're like very low res, and the games themselves, they have really small windows, and you can even see that if you're recording the game with your mouse visible, how much bigger the mouse is than it's supposed to be on the screen. But anyways, let's get away from that topic and jump into the trailer. I mean, do I even need to say anything beyond iconic? London Bridge is falling down, backwards people thought it's might kill all, even though this song is centuries old. So obviously there's no fucking FNaF lore, but people were grasping onto anything back in those days in terms of theories because the games were mostly straightforward, so people were looking for extra details that didn't exist at all. These days people are just trying to figure out what the actual plot is. But yeah, there's a big difference between theories back then and now, and that's one of those big differences here. Of course, the Withered Bunny, iconic shot of his red eye showing up, the Scott phone call, hello, hello, hello. Well, if you're hearing this, then chances are you made a real poor career choice. And then the music kicks in and it's super dense. Wow, 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 wow. I'm not gonna keep doing the rendition of the trailer. It's a little cringe, but it's showing off all the new wither designs, which is super cool. Dismantled, destroyed, forgotten, malfunctioning. And then you see Toy Bonnie, and then you see the cameras, and it was just something else, man. You had to be there to really understand how epic these trailers were, especially this one. It was just beyond anything that games usually have. I mean, games do have a lot of hype trailers, but the Scott, Cawthon, FNaF trailers were just a separate kind of hype that is really hard to describe. You really just had to be there. And of course, the Withered Foxy jumpscare got revealed, and people thought that he was saying freedom, even though it's just a jumpscare sound. But an interesting thing about Mike Kill All, which connects to that, I'll mention a little later because I'm going through the history so far. But of course, like I said before, the game dropped way ahead of schedule. It was absolute insanity, huge hit, even bigger than the first game, and this might have been the peak of FNaF popularity, like I said in one of the earlier videos. There's not too much history after that. He didn't really end up patching the game that many more times. Of course, as with the previous game, there was a mobile port that Scott made, although interestingly, the difference here is that in the original mobile port, you could buy the plushies of the FNaF animatronics, and you had to pay money for it. That was the way to monetize the game on mobile devices, but Scott decided to reuse that idea, but instead of buying the plushies, you could just beat challenges and you would earn a decoration on your desk, which I think is way better. And it really saddens me that he kind of went away from that approach in the future games. He never really did that anymore. It's cool to have decorations in your office that you earn. In general, the game I think is a perfect sequel. Like I said before, it's more of the same. It's more of the stuff that we want to know about. And it's not just like random new stuff, a random new location with a random new characters. No, it's all very specific. It's expanding on the mystery of the puppet. Well, it creates the puppet in this game, but the puppet gave life to the original animatronics, so it's kind of providing a larger backstory to the missing children. From the first game, there wasn't that much to work with, but Scott very intelligently expanded specifically on the things that were in the first game. The Bite of 87. Well, this game takes place in 1987, and we know that the Bite is in that location. Hopefully by Mangle. I know Scott kind of retconned it in the book, saying it's Foxy. It doesn't logically make sense, so I still choose to believe. Sorry, copium. Choking on that copium right now. But I choose to believe that Mangle did the Bite of 87. It just makes perfect sense that it would be Mangle. First of all, angry from being taken apart and stuff like that. And climbing on the ceiling and the jump scare. I mean, come on, that has to be Mangle. Also, the fact that the toys got scrapped at the end of the game. It's not just for the explanation of why they weren't in the first one, but also because of the Bite. But I don't know, Scott maybe just forgot that he put this detail in. As the games go on, stuff from the previous games kind of becomes irrelevant. But yeah, the game expanded specifically on the things from the first game, the MCI. We see it in the Foxy Go 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 minigame, and it's the Give Life, Give Gifts minigame. That should have been the other way around. And then on top of the Bite of 87, we also get more Golden Freddy. That's like one of the biggest mysteries of the first game, if not the biggest one. And Golden Freddy is way more prominent in this game. He shows up in Save Them. He shows up in Give Gifts, Give Life with a jump scare. He's an actual enemy in the game with AI. He doesn't just crash your game like an Easter egg like Shadow Bonnie. He's actually one of the programmable characters. He's supposed to show up in the game. He didn't code it correctly, so he only shows up on night 2, 6, and 7, but nevertheless, he actually shows up as a character. He has a way bigger presence. It just makes perfect sense. It's all following up on the stuff from the first game. It's not just random new stuff he introduced. Of course, he did introduce a couple new things, like the puppet, for example, and Purple Guy, but really, it's all just mostly an extension of the previous game's lore. So then you have a lot of cool theories come out from this game. Obviously, the phone guy is actually Purple Guy theory, which I already explained, doesn't really make any sense. Even back then it didn't, but it was the best they had to work with, so I can cut them some slack. Then I actually myself had a funny theory that Balloon Boy isn't real because he teleports to your office, and it just kind of speaks to how unfinished that whole character is. It felt so bizarre. People were just really coping back then, seeing things that don't exist at all. For example, there's this render of Balloon Boy in the office, and it seems like something is in his mouth. People thought it was like eyeballs in his mouth. I'm not sure what the fuck that is. It's probably just some reflection. Like, I really doubt there's something actually in his mouth. And his buttons look different under different lighting, so people are like, oh my god, is he changing button colors? No, it's like just different lighting. It's so bizarre, the theories that people cooked up for this game, because there wasn't that much to work with. One that I like, and I don't know if it's even canon anymore, but the theory that Freddy's Family Diner is the restaurant that we see in the Save Him minigame with the puppet, obviously. By the way, something I wanted to mention really quick, the puppet is the marionette. That's the correct name, but we don't really care. What I care about explaining is that it's a male character, but the spirit possessing the marionette is female. As we know, it's Charlie. So it's another retcon that Scott made in the games eventually, because Charlie was also the daughter of Henry in the books, and she was the protagonist of the Silver Eyes trilogy, but we're not gonna get into that in this video. It's a big topic right there. Also, there's this funny trolling bit that started with this game about Mangle's gender. Obviously, Mangle looks feminine, but is referred to as he and her throughout the game. One guy calls Mangle him, but then Mangle is in ladies' night, so it's all confusing. My favorite headcanon about this is that, well, obviously Scott is just trolling at this point, but my headcanon is that it's two different heads, which is why Mangle is simultaneously referred to as he and she. If you pay attention, it's not just inconsistent. You will have, for example, the description of Mangle's behavior in Ultimate Custom Night, and Mangle will be referred to as both she and he in the same sentence, so that's very, very intentional. But yeah, it's just kind of a funny thing to argue about, and Scott always made fun of it, and it continued with Funtime Foxy, which is a character that looks a lot like Mangle. And yeah, also, Phone Guy did mention they wanted to make this location more kid-friendly, which is why they changed the Pirates Cove to Kids Cove, but as you could see, it's a giant pile of scrap laying on the ground there, so it's not very kid-friendly at all. And I also kind of find it funny how Phone Guy said that Foxy probably never showed up in the Night 2 or Night 3 call right after he mentioned Foxy in the previous night. He definitely knows that Foxy showed up, but he's like pretending that it's not supposed to happen, so I don't know, it makes me a little nefarious in this one instance at least. There's also a lot of unused features in this game. I wanted to switch topics to more the mechanical, technical side of the game. So there's a toxic meter that would have prevented you from keeping the mask on for too long, but Scott fixed that by making Foxy more aggressive when you hold the mask down, and also obviously you need to wind the music box. You can only do one thing at a time, so of course it would mean that the toxic mechanic is kind of pointless. I would like to have it included because it's actually pretty functional. Like, he didn't not finish it, he just decided to not use it eventually. He cut it out of the game, but it was basically done. So it would be cool to have it like as a challenge mechanic, like something you can put on to make the game harder when there's multiple subsequent blackouts, and that could really mess up your game, so that could be cool. There's a lot of in-game files that are cool to look at in the MFA file, which later turned into a radar and house map in the next two games. Basically, every character is shown on the map with these objects. You can also see other objects, for example, the ones that are deciding which ambience plays when, because ambience is dependent on how close the animatronics you are. And there's a bunch of other information, counters, which is a number thing basically that is in Click Team. Counters are used for basically everything when it comes to storing numbers, and that's very present in FNaF 2 and FNaF 1 as well. You also have this really bizarre Easter egg. Remember I said Michael at the beginning? Well, there was a really weird sprite in the game files that never showed up in the game itself, but it's called Mike, and it looks like a weird skull. Super bizarre, and it only looks like a top left portion of like a 1/4 of a cut sprite image. It's really hard to describe. I'm just going to show it to you so you get what I'm saying. But yeah, it's really strange. There's also the puppet being in the office, so some kind of mechanic was initially going to have her actually show up in your office, but that never got implemented. And there's this render of the puppet that people say is unused, but actually if you get the hallucinations of the puppet, which I tried to get a lot of the times, but I don't think I ever got them, it actually shows up sometimes in those hallucinations, so it's not an unused file actually. I think that about covers it for the in-game files that you can find. I also wanted to briefly talk about the guitar. So Toy Bonnie and Bonnie had their guitar changed in console ports because turned out that that type of guitar is actually copyrighted, so they had to change them for Pizza Sim, FNaF 2, and of course Five Nights at Freddy's 1, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Basically, wherever Bonnie's guitar is visible, they had to change it, and they were kind of lazy about it because the render where Toy Bonnie's holding his guitar, it's just weird. Like, he's just standing there in an unnatural way. It really looks awkward, and not in a good creepy way, but just in a way that they didn't bother posing him properly. Whoever handled that, I'm not sure if Scott gave them the models or he was involved somehow in creating the renders. I'm not sure. All I know is that they also had to replace the posting in the newspaper for FNaF 2, and it just looks like fucking dog shit. I'm sorry, it looks so bad. It's so photoshopped. It's so much worse than the original. I really don't understand why they couldn't just, you know, kind of replicate the image with the new guitar. It's just fucking strange sometimes what the people behind the scenes end up doing with these games. games. Another funny bit is that if you look at the pink slip and the render of the toy animatronics behind it, and I'm pretty sure it also shows up in other places, but especially that one, Toy Bonnie's guitar, it clips through Toy Freddy. So I'm gonna zoom in so you can really tell. It's pretty damn funny. Okay, now let's get into some other mechanics. For example, I mentioned puppet stalling before, so basically the right way to use it and the way it works is that the puppet is about to escape the music box, but you stun it with the flashlight. You hold the flashlight on its face while you charge the music box, preventing it from escaping. That's basically that mechanic in a nutshell, and 1020 mode might have been nearly impossible without it. It's a very useful mechanic, so definitely know about it. If your music box is almost running out, just hold down the flashlight and keep it on the puppet while you wind the music box back up a little bit. It won't necessarily save you forever, but it'll save you in that moment from the puppet escaping. Foxy also does not attack during blackouts, which is why on 1020 mode you actually want to have a blackout pretty much every single time you put the camera down if your music box is wound enough, because Foxy will be blocked by the blackout. It wouldn't be fair to have him attack you while the blackout is occurring. Scott made sure of that. So it can actually be very beneficial to have the blackout happening. Also, I mentioned that I was afraid of characters moving even though their AI is at 0. That is a thing that happened if FNaF 1. The characters would start to move in the night eventually, but it seems like Scott fixed it by this game's arrival, because I have not really experienced that aside from Foxy, because Foxy's mechanics are very unique. He's got his own separate little timer that will go up no matter what, which I think is kind of a problem, but you know, that's how this game works. On the topic of 1020 mode, Markiplier cheated. He didn't actually beat the mode. I'm sorry if I ruined your childhood, but it's true. He was playing 2020 and pretended to beat 1020 mode. He cut to like 5 AM and just played through 420 mode, which might have been convincing enough for some people because it has a lot of blackouts and Foxy, but there are no toy animatronics inside, and you get the star for beating that mode, not 1020. Then Markiplier never actually logged into the game to show you the Golden Freddy plushie on the table, and even though he does have a star next to Golden Freddy, that doesn't mean he didn't cheat. He could have easily found the CD plus skip and done it that way. So yes, no hard feelings against Markiplier. With the strategies at the time, it would have taken him days to beat 1020 mode and an insane amount of suffering, and probably he just didn't want to ruin his life by playing a stupid bear game to completion for some 12-year-olds amusement, and he also didn't want to be honest about it because the same 12-year-olds would have torn him to shreds. So I kind of get why he did it, but I did wish that he was honest about it. Eventually he did stop playing these max modes and just said, I relinquished my crown, whatever. So he should have done that, I think, but whatever. What happened happened. And let's not talk about the Easter egg characters, of which there are many. There's Endo02, there's Shadow Freddy, and there's Art Elks WQ, whatever the fuck, Shadow Bonnie. No one gives a shit what its actual name is. Scott is very insistent in calling it that, but I don't really care, and neither does anyone else, it seems, because Shadow Bonnie is just a better name. We also have JJ, which I don't think I've ever gotten, but I could have easily missed her, and she's just a female version of Balloon Boy, I assume. She's barely present in the series, so it's kind of a really bizarre Easter egg character to have. What's interesting to me is that Shadow Freddy is kind of just purpley shaded, while Shadow Bonnie is pure black, and as the series goes on and other people get involved with it, these kind of details start to get lost, but I actually think there was a point to that, especially why their names are different. You have Shadow Freddy, which is purple, then you have Purple Guy, which is that way because he's in Shadowed, and then you have Shadow Bonnie, which is a community name for an animatronic that Scott really insists is a different name. So maybe there's actually a point to that, but whatever, let's not dig into the lore too deep. But it's a very rare Easter egg. Scott coded it to be 1 in a million or something, but ClickTeam cannot handle odds that low, so it kind of circles back to 33,000 or something like that. Still insanely rare to see, and it will crash your game if you look for it too long. Then there's also this mechanic of Shadow Freddy and Endo in the vent. They were supposed to run away with a sound and with making the cameras glitch out with static. This mechanic is really easy to re-enable. I'll attach a video which shows this in detail. Once again, Scott was just rushing with the game and he forgot to fix this. It's like an easy change of one line of code, and he could have made that mechanic work on release. Or maybe he changed his mind, he actually wanted people to watch the characters. I don't know. I'm leaning towards him just being lazy in that instance, honestly, considering all the other lazy stuff in this game. Now let's talk a little bit more about the lore. You have the Night Guards, which is interesting because in this game it's plural. You have the first Night Guard in the lore, which was William. You have the second Night Guard, which is Jeremy, not Michael Afton or Mike Schmidt or whatever you want to believe. Considering that in the week before, Ralph...
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass off.
considering that in the week before, Ralph forgets the characters try to attack him, he's always questioning reality and coming back to work even though it's mortally dangerous. It makes sense that Jeremy would actually keep coming to the location even if he didn't have a strong motivation like Michael Afton. But we know that Fritz Smith is the character, quote unquote, that is in the custom night. He gets fired on the first day for tampering with animatronics and odor. The exact same reason why Mike Schmidt gets fired. So obviously Fritz Smith is Mike, also because his name is kind of an amalgamation of Mike Schmidt and Jeremy Fitzgerald, Fritz Smith. So that's definitely Michael coming back on the 7th day to figure out what happened, something like that. So that means he was old by that point. It's been 4 years since the bite of 83 and he was a teenager then, so maybe he was old enough to get that position. And I don't have too much to say about it other than Jeremy is obviously the victim of the bite of 87 as evidenced by the location closing and the toys being scrapped, and both other Jeremys having their face missing at some point in the franchise. Everything points to the fact that Jeremy is the victim of the bite. I love when stuff gets cleared up like that. Another interesting tidbit is that the purple guy had no name and fans named him Vincent, and so it stayed for the years until we got the Silver Eyes revealing his actual name, and then it got reinforced in sister locations. So sorry Vincent fans, there was a lot of weird fan art with Vincent and a lot of people thought he's literally purple because the whole shadow aspect wasn't really well explained, and a lot of people still to this day confuse literal purple guys with the shadow purple guys, which is what Scott was going for with this game and FNaF 3 and 4. Then you have another interesting detail about the location. It has birthday posters everywhere. Happy birthday, happy birthday. One guy mentions this in I think the Night 6 call. He says that they're scheduled for one more event, the birthday. And guess when Jeremy Fitzgerald gets his forehead bitten? Probably that's when it happens, because he gets moved to the day shift. So it's a cool detail that Scott included. There's also a wet floor in one room and it's just there the entire week, which is kind of strange. There's no kitchen? There's something that was really bizarre in this game. There is no kitchen in the whole building, which is bizarre because how the fuck do you guys make pizza in here? Are you making it in different rooms? Again, seems like something that Scott just rushed. Like he just didn't bother including the kitchen for some damn reason. Also with the room flashlight, when you flash the cameras, the rooms without the wizards in them have the flashlight positioned differently than the wizards. Seemed like Scott rendered it one way when toy animatronics were added. Then when he got around to modeling the wizard animatronics, the position of the flashlight changed because he wanted them to look a different way on the cameras. And he just didn't bother going back and changing, updating the toy animatronic versions. Again, it's so lazy, bro. Like, come on, man. And an interesting detail though about the location is that the drawings on the walls, especially in your office, have the old animatronics. The withered Chica and Golden Freddy even and Bonnie were on those drawings, not the toy animatronics, which means that originally they reopened the location with the wizards as the stars, but then they changed their minds and made toy animatronics, which briefly is mentioned in the phone calls. He said the idea was first to repair them, which might be the explanation for their weird new designs, because they're clearly very different from the first game. He said the idea was first to repair them, but they were just so ugly, and the smell. I'm pretty sure I'm quoting him very closely. So the company just decided to go into a whole new direction, and we know from the newspapers that the location was open for a few weeks, so this whole switcheroo with updating the designs of the wizards, then bringing in the toy animatronics, all happened within weeks, which is pretty impressive, honestly. Good on you, Fazbear Entertainment. If only your co-founder wasn't a fucking murderer, everything would have been great. So yeah, that's an interesting piece of lore about that game and location. Now let's get into some of the community response to the game. Toy Chica. Yep.
She is such a bad bitch, though. I will fuck the shit out of that robot, man. I'm not even...
5 a.m. at Freddy's. It's a really funny animation made by Pimations. Yeah, he made a lot of funny animations and he still makes them frequently. He made animations in the first and the third game as well. He also made a security breach animation, which was pretty good. So yeah, I think he's pretty funny, and this was probably his best FNaF animation. It was really funny because it really delved into the idea of the night guard using the mask, and Foxy was the only one who could see through the disguise. It was just really well voice acted and well animated, and it had some genuinely funny moments. Like, this aged pretty well, all things considered, so I recommend checking that out if you haven't seen it before or if you wanna refresh your memory. And of course the Living Tombstone song then later resurfaced, kind of like the Creeper, oh man, song by Captain Sparkles as a meme. That was a weird era. I guess people just wanted to meme on the old game-related songs. And some people even thought that he exposed the lore of the game, even though it was like his own interpretation of the lore, and that he was in cahoots with Scott or something, which is complete fucking nonsense. But the video is pretty good, and the story is interesting. And yeah, the song is pretty good as well. Not probably one of my favorites, but all of the beats always hit hard. So I recommend revisiting that song if you haven't heard it in a while. You probably heard it back like 3 years ago or so when it was viral with Purple Guy, the man behind the slaughter meme. I mean, it is kind of funny out of context. Kind of like the quirky characters moving at night, whatever that line was from Night 1 or something like that in FNaF 1. Also, people ended up over time memeing on that line because quirky kind of became a different meaning word over time. It changed in Urban Dictionary, let's just say, in people's slang. So yeah, in retrospect, the lines became funnier than they originally were. Another cool thing inspired by this game is the Day Shift of Freddy's fangames, which is one of my favorites, honestly. Why Day Shift? Because the day guard from FNaF 2, like I mentioned before, being William, was featured heavily in the games. And yeah, it's a whole thing. If you want to delve into that, I'll probably make videos on this series of games because they're frankly, I mean, some of it aged pretty badly, but it's still iconic and classic. I definitely want to revisit that. So we're almost at the end of my notes. There's a couple more things to mention. We have BB being the late addition here, and that's true. He's not really on the cameras. His movement makes no sense at all. He's not affected by the flashlight, which might have been intentional, but I think it's a consequence of him being added late into the game. He wasn't in any of the teasers. He's not in the Save Them minigame, so it really seems like he was added late and then Scott didn't bother adding him to a bunch of other places. Another lazy thing about this game is Toy Foxy's body being missing on that poster. With every other toy animatronic, they had their bodies visible, but Mangle only had the head because it was mainly intact. So before we leave the video off, I want to mention the hoax characters that existed. First of all, the cupcake blinking is fake. It's not in the game. If you look into the game files, there's no animated version of that. Someone faked that and posted it and claimed that it was actually an Easter egg when it's not true. The Shadow Man being in the cameras, which I think is a cool Easter egg. That would have been actually kind of cool to have. The purple guy looking Golden Freddy, which people say looks like shit, but I always thought he looked kind of cool. But that one is fake. Golden Toy Freddy obviously was super fake. Shadow Balloon Boy, also not real. And the Gray Puppet, all hoax characters, way more than in the last game. And that's gonna be it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this stroll down memory lane. Don't forget to smash subscribe, ring my bell, and as always, stay